I bet you've had this moment. A conversation starts off friendly, but 5 minutes later, you're both saying things that you'll need to walk back, and you're left wondering how it escalated this fast. Nobody planned for it to turn into a fight, and worst, you might even both agree on the bigger goal, but something drove the narrative in a different direction. You begin replying before they finish. Your tone harshens slightly. Their answers get shorter. Neither of you notice the shift clearly at first, but you both feel it. Here's what most people miss. Arguments rarely explode out of nowhere, but once they do get going, they can accelerate rapidly. And escalation usually happens when two people start speeding each other up. First, you're exchanging information. Then something small happens. A word choice, a look, a pause that feels loaded, and attention shifts. You stop listening for meaning and start listening for tone. You answer faster, they respond sharper, and you interpret that as pushback. So you move to shore up your position. They react to this, and now the conversation isn't moving forward. In fact, the negative spiral is gaining speed. This doesn't feel like escalation, it feels like urgency. You feel the need to correct that detail immediately, to clarify what you meant before it hardens. But once the pace increases, curiosity drops. You stop asking questions and you start defending conclusions. You may notice yourself finishing their sentences, either out loud or in your head. You might start interrupting or repeating the same point in slightly different wording, and they mirror you. Each reaction makes sense on its own, but together they form a feedback loop. The faster it moves, the harder it becomes to slow down. You're no longer solving the original issue, you're reacting to reactions. You may notice the shift before voices rise, a subtle increase in tempo, a firmer edge in speech, shorter responses, a particular look. And I'd be interested to know which early signs you recognise in your arguments. Leave a comment. What this means is that an escalation to full-blown argument is often a pacing problem disguised as disagreement. When conversations speed up, interpretation narrows. And when interpretation narrows, assumptions rush in to fill the gaps. A question starts sounding like an accusation. A suggestion feels like criticism. The tone becomes more important than the content. This is often the turning point, the moment someone feels personally judged instead of understood. And once that happens, escalation tends to become locked in. So how can we interrupt this negative spiral? You don't need dramatic silence, which might only make things worse. You need to reset the pace. Slow your delivery slightly. Lower your volume a fraction. Leave a brief space before replying, not exaggerated, just controlled and purposeful. Then label the shift instead of blaming the person. I think we're both speeding up. Let's slow this down. I want to make sure I'm understanding you. Just to make sure I've got this right. Naming the process changes what you're focused on. Instead of reacting to each other, you're adjusting the conversation together. And this small shift often dials back the emotion before the conversation reverts to a shouting match. When pace stabilizes, interpretation improves. And when interpretation improves, tension frequently drops without conscious effort. When you apply this early, you can interrupt escalation before it spirals, which helps you protect clarity and prevent unnecessary conflict. But this isn't always enough, because even when pace stabilizes, something else can take over. The moment a comment feels personal, defensive reaction tends to activate automatically. And in the video on screen, we break down why defensiveness can seemingly come out of nowhere and how to reduce it before it completely derails a conversation further.